dive.
Welcome to an episode of Dive, Dive, Dive. This time we are looking at the Gudder dive site at Bass Point. Here on the map you can see it is on the north side, right up there where the X is. And you'll be travelling past the Loader dive site to get to it on the same road. So we'll look at getting to the Gudder from the Loader from the last episode. Again here, you can see where the Gudder dive site is. And from the previous time, the toilets that were on top of the hill just past the Loader. Travelling along the same road, that will eventually take you to the parking areas to the west and eastern side of the Gudder. Now this is a dirt road, it's not always the best, so it's a slow speed limit, so please be careful because there's blind corners as well. Now when you get down to the parking area at the Gudder, this is what you'll come across first. You will be turning left here into this, the western side of car park for the Gudder. To get to the Boston one, you'll travel through that car park and then down this short stretch here till you reach the Boston car park down here on the eastern side of the Gudder. Now to the back of the car parking area there on the Boston park, you can see a little sign and walkway. That takes you down to the memorial site for the City Services Boston that ran aground here during the war days. Now the infantrymen that were stationed here at the time, I believe most of them lost their lives, saving all the crew for the City Services Boston. So when you do come down, you can have a little wander down here and read and have a look. Now, back to diving entry and exit points from the parking areas. Now here you have the western side parking area, then the Boston Services on the eastern side. In between you can see the toilet block here. Quite handy if it was a bit of a trip. Now travelling down from the western side, you'll travel around this direction, down the slope and then onto the rocks. Now when you go onto the rocks, please be careful because they can be a little bit treacherous with all the gear on. And you will eventually reach the western entry side point. Now, taking from the eastern side, we travel down the slope and usually along the edge here next to the green. Now there are two ways that you can travel down here, or the two main ways. This is what most of us use to reach your entry point on the eastern side. Now entering the Gudder from the eastern side, you have your step. Now there is a ledge that is right under the step there, so you need to make sure you travel out a little bit from the step when you enter the water, especially if it's a low tide. If you don't, you'll find out very quickly. Now getting out on the eastern side, these exit points are tide dependent, so on the lowest tide you would go to number 1 out here. From low to mid tides to higher tides you can use number 2 here, and from mid and high tides you can use number 3. Now number 3 is quite good if there's a little bit of a swell running and you want to get out of the swell to get out, as the step knocks the swell off you. Now first one we'll have a look at is number 1 for the exit. Now here, looking down on the first one, this is where you'd come up to and stand up to take your fins off. Once you've done that, you'd then travel up here, a little step up, and on the top there you can hang on to the rock ledge to help you stabilise to get out. Now you can also use this point here to travel up, but you'd want to be on all fours to do this, especially if there's a little bit of a swell running, because that is very slippery going along there. Now looking at this same exit from a different viewpoint from above, here is where you would come up to and take your fins off. You would then travel along the edge there and a little step up there and continue on up and out of the water. If you choose to, you can come up the slope here again on all fours, and be careful, it's very slippery. And if you do choose to go up this way, be careful about it. I have seen a friend do this when there was a bit of a swell running, and he caught the express up and back down. Quite funny to watch at the time. Luckily he wasn't hurt. Now, looking at the second exit point, which is a low to mid tide to a high tide, that is right next to the entry step itself, which you can see here. Now again, this is a sloped exit point, and it can be very slippery as well. Now travelling up along here, at the start of that is where you'd take your fins off using the rocks on the top there to stabilise yourself for when you take your fins off and for when you're walking up to get out. Now looking at the same one from a different viewpoint, you have your entry step just up there, and then your path along here that you'd be walking up after you've taken your fins off. When you reach up there, you'd stand on this small rock, which is also quite slippery at times, and hold onto the rocks above. You'd step on that with your left foot and then up through the gap with your right foot to get out. Again, hold onto the rocks on the top here to help stabilise yourself as you're coming up, especially if there's a little bit of a swell running, because that'll push and pull you on the slippery rock. Now the third exit point here, which is a mid tide to a high tide, and here you can see it on a low tide, you'll have your step up here, and right in close to it you'd come up there and up onto that little ledge point. That's where you'd take your fins off and then proceed up further. Now the blue line there is where the very high tides can reach at times. Again, now looking at that third exit point again, you have your entry step. Where you'd come up is right beside it to land on this little plateau. That's where you take your fins off and then continue up right beside the shelf edge there. Now that shelf edge you can use to help hold on to climb up out. Now we've done the eastern side, let's look at the western side. The entry stride point is about here, and then your exit point is down here. On the western side we only use one exit point now, so not much choice over on that side. Looking a little closer, your entry stride point, which has a couple of rocks either side of it, now looking from how you would see it when you're standing on that side, your entry step, and your two little rock ledges either side of you. And directly across you can see the eastern side there, the step to get in from that side. Now looking at it from a slightly different angle, your entry step and your two little rocks on the side. Now either one of those you can choose to sit on to put your fins on and then stand back up and have a giant stride into the water. It's a little bit of a drop, so be prepared for that. Now exiting on the western side, now this is at a low tide, you would come out around here. Now, you enter the gutter at this point here, and then you travel out either on the surface or under to what we call 10 metre rock. Now, at 10 metre rock, just past it, is a flat plateau. Now, this is still in the shelter of the gutter, so if there is a westerly current, you'll still be sheltered here. Now, if the westerly current is running, the moment you come out from this short plateau here, it'll start hitting you, and you'll find out very quickly. Now, you can get hit with a bit of a swell here, so don't mistake the swell for current. The current will push you to the west. If you are getting that and concerned about it, easiest and safest way is to go around the corner here to the right, which is heading east, and into the nursery area. There's quite a lot to see around here as well, and you can spend a bit of your dive through here, and when it's time, turn, let the current bring you back a little bit towards the gutter, and as it's bringing you back, be very quick when you get over the ridge to go up into the gutter and out of the current. Otherwise you'll get to it'll take you across to the left hand side there and against the wall and down, so it'll be hard to come back up from down there depending on the strength of the current. You can then come up into the gutter, relax, safety stop, and reach your exit points. Now, if there is no westerly current at the gutter, your entry point as per usual, and then you travel out to 10 metre rock on the plateau, and this is basically where you start to navigate out to your dive sites. Now, first one, if you travel to the left and follow the white rock wall down, you'll come to the second gutter, which is at the end of that rock wall. Believe me, you can't miss it. Quite easy to find, and if you followed around further from there, you'd follow the white rock and weed line. Now you can follow that round if you're not too sure on your nav, and when you're ready, turn around and come back. And all it is to come back, keep the weed on the left and the white rock on your right, and it'll bring you all the way back up into the gutter. Now, if you're going to travel a little bit further out, you can go to the third gutter. It's a nice little spot there for nudies and everything else. And we also find spiders out there. Now, the other one to go to is Spider Rock. Now, just past the 10 metre plateau, there is a little group of rocks there that look like a grave site. From that, magnetic north, and that will take you out to Spider Rock. Now, as you're travelling out along there, you'll come along the top of a ridge line. Now, at the end of that ridge line is Spider Rock, which is where it suddenly stops. And it's a about a 10-metre drop or 5-metre drop around the outside edge of the Spider Rock there. So it's quite high. Now, due east of Spider Rock is Blue Devil Cave. Now, that's where we get the Eastern Blue Devil and some wobbegongs and a few other things out there. It's quite a nice little spot too. Now, when you've finished your dive, to travel back, you head south. Now, depending on which of the dive sites you're at, is depending on whether it is dead south, a little bit west of south. But either way, if you come down and you hit the big white rock wall, you can then just follow the wall back up from near Second Gutter or wherever you landed, come back into 10-metre rock, and then back into the gutter for your safety stop, and then up to your exit points. The next episode will have more information on navigating to the three main dive spots at the gutter: the Blue Devil Cave, Spider Rock, and Third Gutter. Also, a little about the boulders at the back of Third Gutter. That's quite an interesting dive as well. Thanks for watching this presentation from Dive Dive Dive. I hope it's been helpful for you about diving at the Gutter Bass Point. Comments are welcome below, along with suggestions, but please be polite, as swearing etc. will be removed. Soon I will be also adding some funny stories from the early starting days of diving. They are from around the early 1900s, and there will be a few pics from the book as well. Pictured here, you can see this is the original manual that was issued to the UK Navy clearance divers from back in the very early 1900s. And that book is very thick and contains a lot of information, especially from back in those days. Good diving, everyone. See you topside next time, and remember,
dive, dive, dive.